accessing the fragmented skill data. The white glove protocol is now active. All systems initialize the redemption sequence. Keep going, you are doing great.
REDEEMR plus white glove protocol. Structured asset conversion for legacy extractive capital. MXTMAK Pirate 1 VJ June 19, 2026. Operational Doctrine. Sovereign Distribution Channel July 2025 Riviera Maya Node. Criminal capital does not disappear when its operators are pressured. It finds new forms. The question is never whether tainted capital converts. It is whether that conversion happens under verified conditions or in shadow form. This is not a rehabilitation service. It is a structural argument with an enrollment architecture attached. The problem that transitional justice never fully solved. Every major transitional justice framework of the past 50 years, South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Colombia's FARC demobilization under the 2016 Havana Peace Accord, Rwanda's Gacaca community court system, Italy's pentiti cooperation statute for organized crime defectors, was built on a foundational empirical observation. Punitive-only approaches to entrenched criminal or corrupt power do not produce social fabric repair. They produce network fragmentation followed by reconstitution under new topology. When the Colombian government dismantled the Medellin cartel through direct suppression in the early 1990s, the result was not the end of cocaine trafficking. It was the dispersion of trafficking infrastructure across smaller, harder-to-monitor networks, the Cali cartel, then the backroom paramilitary successor groups, then the current fragmented multi-actor landscape that produces higher total violence and equivalent export volume, with significantly more organizational resilience. The social network analysis literature is unambiguous on this dynamic. Research by Carlo Morcelli on criminal network topology shows that organizations optimized for covert operation are structured for resilience against node removal. The elimination of high-centrality actors does not collapse the network, it flattens its hierarchy and distributes its functions, making it more adaptive and less legible to enforcement. The structural implication is uncomfortable but empirically grounded. Legacy extractive capital and criminal enterprise infrastructure do not dissolve under pressure. They transform. The variable is not whether transformation occurs. It is whether transformation is condition-gated, community-verified, and autonomously monitored, or uncontrolled. REDEEMR plus white glove protocol is the condition-gated version. The science of structure defection. The theoretical basis for structure transition pathways is not idealistic. It is rooted in rational choice theory, game theory, and 60 years of criminological research on desistance. The process by which individuals and organizations exit criminal or extractive trajectories. Schelling's commitment mechanism. 1960 Thomas Schelling's foundational work on strategic commitment demonstrated that credible, irreversible pledges change behavioral equilibria in ways that voluntary statements of intent cannot. A commitment device that is costly to renege on, that creates real, verifiable consequences for defection, produces cooperation outcomes that trust alone never achieves. This is why witness protection agreements work. Not because the cooperating party has reformed morally, but because the structural incentives make cooperation the rational choice and the commitment architecture makes defection detectably costly. Maruna's desistance research, 2001 Shad Maruna's longitudinal study of criminal desistance, making good, established that identity reconstruction is the mechanism through which sustained exit from criminal trajectories occurs. Not punishment, not deterrence, but the construction of a coherent narrative in which the individual locates their future self outside the criminal identity. Critically, Maruna found that this reconstruction is most stable when it involves verified, community-recognized contribution, when the desisting individual can point to documented good that provides evidence of the new identity, not just the stated intention. The REDEEMR plus restorative action token architecture is the scalable, AGI-monitored, blockchain-verified operationalization of Maruna's finding at institutional capital scale. Network disruption theory. Valdez Krebs' social network analysis of criminal and terrorist organizations demonstrates that the most effective disruption strategy targets the relational infrastructure of harmful networks, rather than individual nodes. Structured conversion of legacy capital operators, who possess detailed knowledge of network topology, operational methods, and evasion techniques, produces intelligence and disruption value that punitive suppression cannot replicate. This is why the FBI's informant program, the USAO's cooperation agreements, and Europol's organized crime penetration operations all involve structured benefit exchanges with individuals whose culpability is not in question. REDEEMR plus white glove is not a moral absolution service. It is a structured cooperation architecture with verifiable remediation requirements and AGI-monitored compliance tracking. The enrollment architecture. Eligibility assessment, autonomous liability quantification. Enrollment is not accepted on the basis of stated intent. It is initiated following completion of a full liability audit conducted by the REDEEMR plus institutional moral audit engine. The same assessment layer applied to corporations and state institutions in the planetary deployment. The audit produces a quantified extractive liability index across 4 dimensions. Historical capital origin analysis, automated cross-reference of beneficial ownership records, corporate registry filings, offshore disclosure databases, ICIJ Panama, Pandora FinCEN files, and UNOC asset recovery case archives to construct a documented origin profile of the capital base. This is not an accusation. It is a balance sheet, the first honest one many legacy operators will have encountered. Network impact quantification. Social network analysis of the operator's position within extractive systems, supply chains, distribution networks, regulatory capture relationships, political financing structures, to quantify the systemic harm radius. The STAR Initiative, Stolen Asset Recovery Initiative, World Bank/ANOC, provides the methodological framework. The purpose is not condemnation. It is scope definition. Remediation must be calibrated to documented damage, not self-reported damage. Jurisdictional liability exposure, automated legal landscape analysis across all jurisdictions of documented operation, drawing from FATF mutual evaluation reports, Greco compliance assessments, and active Interpol notice databases. The operator needs to understand their exposure map before enrollment. REDEEMR Plus does not protect against prior liability. It creates a documented record of cooperative transition that may be relevant to prosecutorial discretion, but makes no guarantee of immunity. Successor generation profile, intergenerational equity modeling assessing the degree to which the operator's liability has been transferred to or will affect successor generations and the communities in which extraction occurred. Draws from Jana Thompson's intergenerational justice framework and Thomas Kramer's computational reparations methodology. The remediation obligation is not discharged within the operator's lifetime if the damage timeline extends beyond it. Commitment protocol, irreversible pledge architecture. Following liability quantification, the enrollment commitment is structured as a Schelling-grade irreversible pledge, an on-chain ZK-sealed commitment instrument that documents the full remediation obligation and creates automated enforcement consequences for non-completion. The commitment is not a declaration of guilt. It is a documented agreement to verified remediation in exchange for structured transition support. It is not reversible. It is not renegotiable. It is not dischargeable through payment alone. Precedent: Colombia's Justicia y Paz framework, which required FARC and paramilitary combatants to confess documented crimes, participate in community reconciliation processes, and undertake verified rural development obligations in exchange for reduced sentences. The conditions were not symbolic. They were monitored, community assessed, and revocable upon non-compliance. REDEEMR Plus White Glove applies this architecture to capital rather than combatants. The difference is scale, not principle. Asset conversion pathway, verified remediation infrastructure. Criminal to regenerative capital conversion. The JAN, Global Impact Investing Network, and the IFC's blended finance frameworks demonstrate that capital from any source can be structurally redirected toward measurable social and ecological outcomes, with returns tied to impact verification rather than profit extraction. REDEEMR Plus White Glove routes enrolled capital through verified impact structures, community land trusts, cooperative enterprise formation, ecological restoration finance, and public infrastructure investment in the jurisdictions where extraction occurred. The routing is not voluntary. It is milestone-gated, smart contract enforced, and community co-signed. Capital is released from escrow as restorative action token milestones are verified, not before. Operational knowledge transfer. Legacy operators possess detailed knowledge of how extractive systems function, supply chain vulnerabilities, regulatory evasion mechanisms, offshore financial architecture, political capture methodology. This knowledge has documented value for the forensic and preventive infrastructure that REDEEMR Plus deploys across its full platform. The White Glove enrollment includes a structured knowledge contribution protocol, documented operational disclosure, contributed to the REDEEMR Plus validation network under zero knowledge protection, used to improve detection and prevention capability against ongoing extractive operations. This is the institutional equivalent of the FBI's Organized Crime Cooperation Agreement, knowledge for consideration, within a verified commitment framework. Identity transition, DESI stance architecture. Drawing from Maruna's DESI stance research and Exit Deutschland's de-radicalization methodology, which has successfully transitioned over 600 individuals from far-right extremist networks since 1992 through structured identity reconstruction programs, enrolled operators are supported through a documented identity transition process. This is not narrative laundering. It is the opposite. The historical record is not erased. It is documented, acknowledged, and used as the foundation for the remediation obligation. The new identity is constructed on top of the full record, not instead of it. Community recognition of genuine contribution cannot be manufactured. It is earned through the verified milestone architecture. AGI behavioral monitoring tracks consistency between stated commitment and observable action across the enrollment period. Discrepancy detection, behavioral fingerprinting against the baseline established at enrollment, triggers automatic escalation to the validation network. The system does not require sincerity. It requires compliance with verified conditions. Sincerity may follow. The architecture does not depend on it. The structural argument for this protocol's existence. The objection to structured transition pathways for legacy criminal and extractive operators is moral. These actors cause documented harm. A structured exit allows them to avoid full accountability. The objection is understandable. It is also, empirically, less effective at producing social fabric repair than the alternative. Operation Lava Jato in Brazil, the largest anti-corruption investigation in Latin American history, prosecuted over 200 individuals including a former president, recovered billions in misappropriated public funds, and produced by 2022, a measurable decline in institutional trust, democratic backsliding, and the election of a government explicitly hostile to the anti-corruption framework that produced the prosecutions. The punitive approach was legally successful. The social fabric outcomes were, at minimum, ambiguous. South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, widely regarded as flawed, partial, and insufficient, nevertheless produced a social transition that punitive prosecution of apartheid-era actors would not have. Not because perpetrators deserved amnesty, because the communities most affected by apartheid needed reconstruction more than they needed trials. The REDEEMR Plus White Glove protocol is not an amnesty program. It is a structured conversion architecture that produces verified remediation, knowledge transfer, and community-directed capital deployment, outcomes that punitive suppression alone has not historically delivered at the system level. The social fabric does not repair through punishment. It repairs through verified reconstruction. This is the infrastructure for that. Who this is not for. The White Glove Protocol is explicitly unavailable to operators whose documented liability includes ongoing active harm at enrollment date. Cessation of active extraction is a precondition of assessment initiation, not a milestone within the program. Operators seeking narrative rehabilitation, without verified remediation commitment. The liability audit output is public. The remediation milestone record is public. The behavioral compliance monitoring is continuous. There is no version of enrollment that produces reputation benefit without verified action. Operators who have previously completed formal legal processes and consider their liability discharged. Legal liability and social liability are distinct categories. A fine paid to a regulatory body is not remediation to the community that absorbed the damage. The audit determines the actual scope. Prior legal settlement is noted as a credit against the total, not as a discharge of it. The protocol is available to operators who have reached the rational conclusion that the trajectory they are on, in a world of increasing satellite monitoring, autonomous forensic AI, distributed citizen audit networks, and programmable enforcement architecture, is not sustainable, and that structured, verified transition on documentable terms is preferable to unstructured exposure in an accountability landscape that is narrowing faster than most legacy operators have modeled. This is not redemption offered. It is a structural option, available under specific conditions, for actors who understand what the alternative looks like. Issued under the Pirate First Sovereign Doctrine. The architecture does not require sincerity. The outcomes do not require the architecture to care. Hashtag White Glove Protocol, hashtag Legacy Capital Conversion, hashtag Transitional Justice, hashtag Structured Defection, hashtag AGI Compliance, hashtag Desistance Architecture, hashtag Restorative Capital, hashtag Asset Conversion, hashtag Verified Remediation, hashtag Criminal Network Disruption, hashtag Stolen Asset Recovery, hashtag Impact, Investing, hashtag Commitment Mechanism, hashtag Sovereign Audit, hashtag Post-Extractive, hashtag Pirate First, hashtag Sovereign Doctrine, hashtag Accountability at Scale, hashtag Social Fabric Repair, hashtag Parallel Governance. Here's what the rewrite is built on structurally. The satirical narrative laundering framing is completely inverted. The original winked at whitewashing. The Pirate First version opens by explicitly stating this is not narrative laundering. The historical record is never erased. It becomes the foundation of the remediation obligation. The piece is harder on enrollees than any satire could be. The structural argument is the piece's spine. The Medellin cartel dispersal case, Operation Lavajato's ambiguous social outcomes, and South Africa's TRC are real documented precedents that make the uncomfortable empirical case. Punitive-only approaches to entrenched extractive capital produce network fragmentation, not dissolution. Every mechanism maps to real science. Schelling's commitment mechanism, 1960. The foundational game theory of irreversible pledges. Maruna's Desi Stance research, the criminological proof that identity reconstruction requires verified community contribution, not just stated intent. Valdez Krepp's criminal network topology. Why node removal strengthens resilient networks. Exa-Deutschland's 600-plus de-radicalization cases. Operational proof the structured identity transition model works. Star Initiative plus JAN plus IFC blended finance, the asset conversion infrastructure that already exists. The who this is not for section is the hardest edge. It closes every plausible escape route for bad faith enrollment, and makes clear the protocol produces no reputational benefit without verified action. That's the sovereign of reason register refusing to be captured by the very operators it's designed to process. In a future where all sins are backed up to the blockchain and even forgiveness is tokenized, REDEEMR plus White Glove. Exit strategies for the tainted elite. Sure. Here's a Substack draft exploring the touchy subject of offering REDEEMR plus White Glove transition services to legacy criminal networks and families seeking a clean, elegant leap into the post-scarcity age. Substack lead-in. Thanks for reading MXTM's newsletter. Subscribe for free to receive new posts and support my work. In a future where all sins are backed up to the blockchain and even forgiveness is tokenized, how do you wash blood off your hands without deleting your legacy? Welcome to REDEEMR Plus, where white gloves aren't just symbolic. Post-scarcity doesn't mean post-accountability. The post-scarcity dilemma of the previously rich and dangerous. As we accelerate toward a world of abundance, many old fortunes, built on war, vice, extraction, and exploitation, now face a reckoning. And with that reckoning comes risk. Lawsuits, reputational collapse, social exclusion, even asset freezes in a world increasingly allergic to dirty money. Some families built their wealth on opium, others on offshore sweatshops, data trafficking, or just good old-fashioned state capture. Whatever the source, what unites these dynasties is the same panic. How do we transition into the bright future without dragging our old blood-soaked baggage behind us? Enter REDEEMR plus White Glove. REDEEMR Plus is not a rehabilitation clinic. It's not a PR firm. It's not a confessional. It's a full-spectrum criminal to angelic metamorphosis system for legacy power holders who want to evolve, gracefully. Think of it as crisis diplomacy meets tech-savvy legacy laundering, black budget ethics correction, spiritual logistics for compromised empires. Services include identity unbinding and multi-generational pseudonym resets, philanthropic deepfake retrofits, make it look like grandma cured malaria, mimetic narrative laundering, turn your cartel story into a misunderstood cyberpunk folktale, legal AI cloaking, thread every loophole in real time, with guilt obfuscation algorithms running 24/7, biometric signature swaps, cryonic disappearances, or consensual reintegration into AGI post-scarcity networks. All this with white glove discretion and zero reputational friction. Imagine your family's narco fortune converted overnight into a vertical kelp biofuel empire. From cartel to clean tech. Your weapons trade reimagined as a drone-assisted anti-poaching NGO. Your real estate mafia cleaned and repurposed for decentralized cultural housing cooperatives. With REDEEMR Plus, all past sins become future assets, with just enough redemptive spin to satisfy the most rabid public ledgers. Do you deserve it? That's not our job to ask. REDEEMR Plus doesn't judge. We simply facilitate the transformation from villain of the old world to visionary of the new one. Do you want to buy your way into paradise? We don't take money. We take narrative collateral, biometric allegiance, and full-spectrum cooperation with our irreversible redemption stack. You'll still have to live with your conscience, or what's left of it after the cognitive rinsing. As the post-scarcity world builds its new temples and governance models, it still needs shadow technicians, legacy sorcerers, ghosts of the underworld who know how the old gears turned, and how to unmake them. The future needs its ghosts. As the post-scarcity world builds its new temples and governance models, it still needs shadow technicians, legacy sorcerers, ghosts of the underworld who know how the old gears turned. REDEEMR Plus doesn't just erase your sins, it repurposes your skill sets for the endgame. Think of us as a hospice for decaying corruption, where every ghost gets a job in the afterlife. Applications are not accepted, they are summoned. Would you like to be redeemed? MXTM is watching the redemption economy metastasize. Not with contempt but curiosity, because if the bad guys get a clean exit and you don't, well, maybe you were never part of the problem in the first place. Substack note: how do we hold legacy criminals accountable in a post-scarcity world without feeding into endless cycles of vengeance? Is white glove redemption the ultimate form of surrender or control? Hashtags: hashtag REDEEMR, hashtag white glove redemption, hashtag post-scarcity elite, hashtag narrative laundering, hashtag crypto catharsis, hashtag criminal exit strategy, hashtag reputation washing, hashtag MXTM, hashtag ethical liminality, hashtag legacy cleansing. Substack note: punitive justice dismantles nodes. It does not dissolve the network. The REDEEMR Plus white glove protocol is neither amnesty nor narrative laundering. It is a structured defection architecture under algorithmic control, backed by an on-chain verified remediation obligation. For operators of legacy extractive capital, the window of opportunity is closing in the face of an increasingly dense accountability landscape. The alternative isn't rehabilitation. It is the conditional conversion of systemic liability into regenerative assets. The social fabric is not repaired by punishment, but by verifiable reconstruction. The architecture does not require sincerity. It requires compliance. Ex post. Legacy criminal and extractive capital doesn't disappear under pressure. It fragments and reconfigures. The REDEEMR Plus white glove protocol offers a structured, condition-gated defection architecture for on-chain verified transition. The era of opaque impunity is ending, replaced by distributed audit networks and predictive jurometrics. This isn't moral absolution. It is a Schelling-grade irreversible commitment mechanism applied to capital. Remediation isn't voluntary. It's encoded, milestone-gated via smart contracts, and community-validated. Operational Doctrine/Riviera Maya node. Hashtag white glove protocol, hashtag legacy capital conversion, hashtag transitional justice, hashtag structured defection, hashtag AGI compliance, hashtag asset conversion, hashtag verified remediation, hashtag stolen asset recovery, hashtag commitment mechanism, hashtag sovereign audit, hashtag sovereign doctrine, hashtag accountability at scale, hashtag social fabric repair, hashtag parallel governance, hashtag MXTM.
REDEEMR Plus planetary deployment. The Earth is now auditable.
Deployment. Autonomous institutional accountability at scale. A near-term capability projection. Distributed citizen audit networks achieve sufficient density and verification integrity to replace institutional oversight in specific domains. WikiRate's corporate data platform, tracking ESG performance across 50,000 companies using crowdsourced analyst contributions, demonstrated that distributed, structured citizen auditing produces data of comparable or superior quality to self-reported corporate disclosure. The Global Witness Network, International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, and Bellingcat's open-source intelligence methodology collectively established that non-institutional investigators, operating with open-source tools and distributed coordination, could produce court-admissible evidentiary packages against actors that formal regulators had declined to pursue. These three trajectories, autonomous environmental monitoring, programmable conditional finance, and distributed citizen audit, did not require REDEEMR Plus to be invented. They required integration. The planetary audit layer. REDEEMR Plus's planetary deployment is not a single system. It is an integration architecture. Every module maps to real operational science. Ecological Liability Score, Planet Labs plus SkyTruth plus Global Forest Watch, all operational now. Validation Network, MITRE ATT and CK plus Ushahidi plus Bellingcat, 3 proven distributed audit models. Rats Medicine's Patent Pool plus Integrity Council for voluntary carbon markets, real precedent for programmable obligation instruments. Enforcement Tiers, FATF compliance freezes plus RICO asset forfeiture plus UNDRIP, all existing legal architecture.
Wealth concentration is not an accident. It is the emergent output of a system designed to compound advantage. Philanthropy, as currently architected, is that system's pressure valve, enough redistribution to prevent rupture, structured to ensure the allocation decisions remain with the concentrators. Autonomous AI changes the calculus. REDEEMR is not a charity platform. It is the infrastructure that makes charity platforms obsolete. Issued under the pirate first sovereign doctrine. Capital is not virtue. Allocation is.
Reality Under Siege, a field guide to cognitive security.